His father had been a tremendous philanderer, womanizer, and it was part of what he simply needed to do, it seemed. He once said to the British Prime Minister, "If I don't have a woman every 3 days, I get a headache."
When most people hear the name John F. Kennedy, they think of glamour, charisma, and the golden glow of Camelot. He was the man who inspired a generation, charmed the world, and seemed to embody youthful hope for America's future. But behind the polished image of the perfect first family, there was another story quietly unfolding, one the public wouldn't learn about for half a century. Today, we're diving into the account of Mimi Alford, a 19-year-old White House intern who claims she was drawn into a secret relationship with the president himself. Beginnings inside the White House.
Mr. President, the Democratic platform promises to work for equal rights for women, including equal pay. What have you done for the women?
Well, I'm sure we haven't done enough, and
In the summer of 1962, while the nation buzzed with significant events from the civil rights movement to the looming threat of Cold War tensions, Mimi Beardsley, later known as Mimi Alford, arrived in Washington as a bright-eyed 19-year-old from Wheaton College. Her internship in the White House press office was supposed to be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, a chance to see government in action firsthand. The atmosphere in the country was charged with political fervor, as activists rallied for equality and the Cuban Missile Crisis loomed just months away. Yet for Mimi, these issues felt like distant realities, overshadowed by the excitement of her new role. Just 4 days after starting her internship, she accepted an invitation from Kennedy's close aide Dave Powers to swim in the White House pool, blissfully unaware the president himself would soon join them. That afternoon changed everything. Mimi later recalled how she was invited upstairs to the residence, the private quarters of the president and first lady. Inside, she describes how the charismatic president guided her towards the edge of his bed and initiated a sexual encounter. It was her first. Reflecting on that moment, Mimi said, quote, "I think he did take advantage. I was so young." In a single afternoon, the young intern found herself swept from the corridors of opportunity into the shadows of a secret that defined much of her subsequent life. Life in secrecy. The affair unfolds.
You're in a limo, they're picking you up and you're taking you, I guess, to the airport to fly you to D.C., and you're doing your homework in the car knowing that you're being sent to Washington to have sex with the president, essentially.
I think that's probably partly what makes me feel sad.
You did not know at the time that there were a lot of other women.
I didn't know. I assumed I was the only one, and it made me feel very special.
After that first encounter, the affair continued for roughly a year and a half. Kennedy reportedly used the alias Michael Carter when he called Mimi to arrange meetings. Their time together was always brief, discreet, and shrouded in layers of deception. While the First Lady was traveling, Mimi was ushered into the residence through staff entrances or during off hours. She later described how Dave Powers sometimes arranged gatherings of young women near the White House pool. There were drinks, laughter, and an unspoken understanding of the president's presence. One evening, she was encouraged to perform a sexual act on Powers while Kennedy looked on, a moment she described as confusing and humiliating. In her words, she wanted to please him but didn't fully understand why. These experiences revealed a disturbing culture of power and privilege inside the Kennedy White House. It was an environment where boundaries blurred and where consent, though spoken, was tangled in layers of awe and authority. Mimi later admitted she didn't feel guilty at the time, but in hindsight was haunted by her lack of guilt towards Jacqueline Kennedy. The emotional distance between the president's public persona and his private behavior became impossible to ignore. Youth, power, and vulnerability.
The relationship allegedly began in 1958, making him twice her age at the time. She alleges that Kennedy would often say there was something special about her, which she admits captured her attention.
Just finished your freshman year at Wheaton College, and you're going to be an intern at the White House. Tell me who that 19-year-old girl was.
She was serious, but she was also very enthusiastic, and she was sheltered a little bit. I'd been at a boarding school, but I was excited about this job. It seemed like a miracle. And I was a little bit wide-eyed, I think.
The affair stood out not only for its secrecy, but for the imbalance of power that defined it. He was 45 years old and the most powerful man in the world. She was a teenager still learning how to navigate adulthood. Mimi says she always addressed him as Mr. President, but that he never once kissed her on the lips, a small but telling detail that suggested emotional distance. When reflecting later in life, she admitted she didn't believe she could have resisted him. Whether one calls the relationship consensual or coercive, it's clear it existed within an immense imbalance. Quote, "The fact is, I was vulnerable, and the president was a very powerful man," she said. Over time, the relationship cooled. By August 1963, their sexual contact had ended, yet the psychological impact remained. Mimi's experience symbolized how easily young women could be drawn into the orbit of power, their autonomy swallowed by the authority of figures who seemed larger than life. Aftermath and silence.
I think when you keep a secret and when you keep silent about something, you do it because you think it's keeping you safe, but in fact, it's deadly.
After the affair ended, Mimi returned to college and tried to resume her studies. She became engaged to her boyfriend, Tony Feinstock, and planned to marry in early 1964. But the truth followed her. After Kennedy's assassination, she confessed the secret to Tony. Though they married, the shadow of that confession never disappeared, and the relationship eventually fell apart decades later. For nearly 40 years, Mimi never spoke publicly about what had happened. The story began to surface only after historians uncovered references to her name in an old oral history transcript in 2003. In 2011, she finally told her side in her memoir, Once Upon a Secret. In interviews, she explained that writing the book was not about revenge, but about reclaiming her story. "I wouldn't call it non-consensual," she said, "but could I have resisted? No." Her words revealed the complexity of her emotions, a mix of guilt, nostalgia, and unresolved questions. She said she didn't initially feel remorse, but later struggled with what that said about her younger self. Quote, "If I were 19 again," she admitted, "I'm not sure I would do anything differently." It was an honest, conflicted reflection from a woman finally free to speak. Cultural impact in changing perceptions. When Mimi Alford's book was released, it sent shockwaves through both the media and academia, challenging the long-standing narrative surrounding the Kennedy legacy. For decades, John F. Kennedy had been venerated almost mythologically, with his personal flaws and indiscretions often relegated to mere footnotes in discussions about his political genius. Alford's candid account forced a new and critical conversation about how society tends to romanticize powerful men while often overlooking the women entangled in their stories. Public reaction to her revelations was notably divided. Many regarded her confession as a courageous act that humanized both herself and the late president, offering a glimpse into the complexities of their relationship. Conversely, some critics dismissed her narrative as opportunistic or questioned its veracity. However, historians emphasized that her timeline and details were consistent with Kennedy's known activities and were supported by patterns observed in the accounts of other women connected to him. Alford's memoir also sparked broader cultural inquiries into issues of consent and power dynamics that resonate with contemporary discussions. Although the Me Too movement would not emerge until many years later, her reflections prefigured many of its central themes: the difficulty of speaking out, the pervasive shame associated with silence, and the often murky boundaries of agency when one party holds immense power over another. Furthermore, the release of Once Upon a Secret reignited public interest in Kennedy's intricate private life. This resulted in a wave of films, documentaries, and retrospectives that began to scrutinize his relationships, transforming them from mere salacious rumors into insightful examinations of the social dynamics of the early 1960s. The once sanitized image of Camelot became more human and flawed, revealing a reality far more complex and less innocent than previously imagined. Presidential affairs unveiled.
Besides his affair with Marilyn Monroe, JFK is rumored to have had relationships with other women during his presidency, including Judith Campbell Exner, who claimed to have been his mistress as well as having connections to organized crime.
To understand her story, it has to be viewed in the broader context of JFK's romantic history. His alleged relationships with Marilyn Monroe, Judith Exner, and Diana DeVeg depict a man who was both magnetic and reckless in his private life. The world admired his charm, but within the White House, that charisma often manifested as a pattern of seduction. Alford's account is particularly significant because it unfolds not in secret hotel rooms or Hollywood hideaways, but within the very home of the presidency. It blurs the line between public service and private desire. Now it's time to hear from you. What do you think about Mimi Alford's story? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section below.